Dan Campbell defends his guys and a special guest here on a Tuesday.
You are Locked On Lions, your daily Detroit Lions podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's good, everybody? Matt Derry with you. It is a Tuesday edition of Locked On Lions, everybody, on the Locked On Podcast Network on a Tuesday, December 17th and a Wednesday, December 18th. Thank you for making us your first listen and checking us out wherever you get your podcasts. That includes on Amazon Music. I had someone come up to me today. They said, I watch or listen to your show on Amazon. I said, all right, cool. Love it. Thanks to those of you that subscribe on YouTube. Thank you to our everydayers who watch and listen to the podcast daily. The great Trey Wingo from DraftKings, the pregame power-up show, Mondays and Thursdays at 6. Check it out. Trey Wingo, formerly of the Four Letter Network, will join us momentarily on the podcast today. Locked On Lions for this, a Tuesday, brought to you by our friends at Gametime. You need tickets to something? Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off your first purchase. I use Gametime to get my tickets for Friday night as I'll be freezing my ass off in South Bend, Indiana with my son Jace, watching our Indiana Hoosiers hopefully triumph in the face of touchdown Jesus and the Notre Dame Fighting Irish. Trey Wingo momentarily. Many of you have probably heard by now, unless you've been under a rock. Dan Campbell did his normal Tuesday morning hit on the 97.1 The Ticket this morning with James Anthony Costa and John Jansen, and defended his team a little bit. He's tired of hearing about the injuries. He's tired of hearing about, the Lions are in trouble. We will play you that audio momentarily. Also, we have to mention the 49ers today have waived Ambry Thomas, who was a starting cornerback for them a while ago, got injured, is now healthy, and is looking to latch on with a contender. We know this. The Lions could use just about anything. They signed Anthony Pittman today off the Jacksonville practice squad. He's been on the Lions like 20 times. But keep an eye on Ambry Thomas, the former Michigan Wolverine. A little bit undersized, but always a solid corner to maybe join the Lions. Let's see about that. But he has been let go, that according to Adam Schefter. All right, so today Dan Campbell did what Dan Campbell does, and quite honestly, I loved it. All right, coaches will sometimes say things like, we don't pay attention to the outside noise. But when you're being interviewed by morning show hosts, all right, and I'm not saying that Jim and John are doom and gloom. I'm just saying they have to ask the coach the questions like, what are you going to do about this? You got 16 defensive players on the injured reserve list and such and such and such. And Dan Campbell defending his guys. Take a listen to this, courtesy of 97.1 from this morning.
We got a bad taste in our mouth. We got kicked around the other day. We lost a few guys, and you know what? It's exactly what we needed. This is exactly what we needed. So we're going to bounce back. We're going to respond. We got guys that are about to have an unbelievable opportunity here, and we will play the game any way needed to win. We still got a good offense. We got plenty of defensive players. I can go rattle them off right now. We're going to put the best 11 on the field. We're going to freaking cut it loose. We're going to play with our special teams. And I don't give a crap if we got to win by 1 point for the rest of the year. That's what we're going to do. And I'm going to be happy about it. We come out of the game with 50 yards of total offense and we win by 1, you're going to see smiles on my face. I promise you. All right? If it's the other way defensively, we give up 700 yards and we win by 1 point, you're going to see a smile from my ear to ear. All right? I can promise you. So we're going to find a way and we're going to get it done.
Okay, so...
All right, there was Dan Campbell. Hang on, I'm fixing that. Jeez. Thank you to the Pat McAfee show as well for helping with the audio there. I was downloading stuff. All right, here's the bottom line. Dan Campbell doesn't want to hear it. Dan Campbell's rallying the troops. This is what this man does best. And he's such a great leader. And it fires you up to hear something like that. We give up 700 yards and win. Who cares? We win by 1. This is how... We're going to use our special teams. Oh, he already does. The guy has more fake punts, 12 fake punts in 4 years. I mean, it fires you up. All right. And I love it. I love it. And if the Lions can add Ambry Thomas, go for it. But like, it's still, while it does fire me up, and he is right, and they can beat the Bears. Who watched the Bears last night? The Bears are a travesty. They're a circus act. All right. The Lions are going to beat the Bears this weekend. I don't care if the Lions are putting Southfield Lathrop's team out there or U of D Jesuits high school team. Seriously, the Bears suck. Go beat the Bears. Lions have enough on offense to beat the Bears. Oh, Caleb. Oh, Caleb is so good. Is he? Really? Because he holds the ball forever and misses open targets. I don't want to hear about Caleb anymore. He might be good. He might end up being decent. But my gosh. But the Lions can beat the Bears. They can beat the Niners. And in a home game with Minnesota in the last week of the year, anything can happen. Now, am I terrified that Justin Jefferson may go for 300 yards receiving against Kindle Vildor? Sure. Of course I am. But I love Dan Campbell rallying the troops. I'm still concerned. I want to see what moves Brad Holmes makes. Gosh, I'm still frustrated, but I'm fired up. I love hearing what Dan Campbell is. And he's right. Only thing that matters at the end is if you win by one. Here's the problem. Lions over the last few weeks, even with a healthy Lee McNeil and Davis and healthy this and healthy that, they were eking out wins over Minnesota, over Chicago and others. Green Bay, etc. Yeah, they could blow out blow out Jacksonville and Tennessee, but we'll see. But that did certainly fire me up. All right, Trey Wingo coming up next. It is a Tuesday Locked On Lions. Don't forget Thursday, Lauren Cox, host of Locked On Bears. Touchdown Bears is going to join us. You know, the Bears haven't scored in the first half since Thanksgiving. Not a surprise. Actually, the Bears were shut out at half against the Lions on Thanksgiving, November 24th. The Bears don't have a single point in the first half of a game since November 24th. Give me a break. Locked On Lions. We're back with Trey Wingo. I mentioned before, Locked On Lions brought to you by our friends at Gametime. Gametime has a new feature for tickets called Gametime Picks that makes getting tickets for live events even easier. Gametime Picks filters out the fluff to show you only incredible deals on great seats. You don't have to waste time searching through thousands of tickets. I'm telling you, a couple weeks ago, the minute that matchup came out, Indiana, my son's alma mater, I told him, hey man, Christmas gift, Hanukkah gift, I got to take you to this game. And that's what I'm doing. Indiana, Notre Dame, the biggest football game in IU's history. And we're going this weekend, and I got the tickets on Gametime. All right? They got super deals. You got views from your seat. You know exactly where you're going to be. All right? Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, use the code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account, redeem the code LOCKEDON NFL for $20 off. Download Gametime today. What time is it? It is game time. And Locked On Lions brought to you by our friends at FanDuel, America's #1 sports book. Right now, new customers can bet $5 and get $150 in bonus bets if you win. FanDuel Sportsbook app gives everything you need to place live bets in the NFL, and they do it all in one place. So when you get a hunch in the middle of the game, you can check out the latest stats, view live play-by-play, and so much more on the same page where you place your bets. Just visit FanDuel.com to join today. You'll get started with $150 in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet. That's FanDuel.com. FanDuel.com. Never waste a hunch. Make every moment more with FanDuel, the official sportsbook partner of the NFL. All right, here we go. Our guest today on a Tuesday edition of Locked On Lions, our buddy Trey Wingo is with us from DraftKings, pregame power-up host, Mondays and Thursdays at 6. You always see him on social media giving his NFL takes as well. Trey, great to see you. What's going on, brother?
Matt, how are you? How is the Lion faithful, by the way, I guess is more important.
Oh, everything's great.
What happened on Sunday.
Everything's great.
Yeah, I don't believe you, just so you know. I don't believe you.
You rarely do. But no, here's the thing. This is crazy, dude. Like,
yeah,
that game Sunday, where you and I were talking off air, that was such a fun game. And yeah, it was a loss, but there's so much to dissect about it. And I haven't done any of it because all we're talking about is Carlton Davis, Lee McNeil, David Montgomery, Khalil Dorsey. I mean, the whole defense is gone other than DJ Reader and the cornerbacks and safeties. It's wild.
Well, there were 13 defensive players on injury reserve before the game. And I think we're now up to 15 or 16. Like, I don't, 16, like 16. Like, I don't, that's your starting 11 and 5 subs. Like, just to put that in perspective.
Right.
That's what we're talking about here. Listen, I get it. Everybody has injuries. I understand that. But I don't ever remember one team being so injury specific on one side of the ball. I mean, I really cannot. I mean, think about it. If you wanted to put it that way, it's technically that's 11 starters and 5 backups. Where do you go? Like, what do you do? It's an impossibility of a situation, and it creates the weird thought that heading into this game, there's a real, not I don't say real, but there's a decent possibility you guys might have to go through the wild card route now.
Yeah. It's interesting because like we said, Kirby Joseph and Brian Branch are 2 amazing safeties and maybe the best safety duo in the league. They are still around. They're still healthy. But now we're talking about, all right, do they move Branch up to corner, get Melifonwu back off of IR? There's so many different moving parts, but you look at the schedule, Trey. I mean, we're talking Chicago and San Fran on the road and then Minnesota at home. How do you view these last 3 games? And can they, as Dan Campbell said adamantly on the radio this morning, can they just somehow pull this out, get the 1 seed and scratch and claw the rest of the way?
Well, that's what it's going to have to be. He may consider not punting for the rest of the season. Like, I'm not even being facetious with that. Like, I'm just being realistically based on attrition. Look, I'm not ruling out anything with the Lions. I'm not ruling out anything with Dan Campbell. No one should rule out anything with Dan Campbell for what we've seen over the last couple of weeks. And we should probably talk about that on some level. Their road is actually a little easier, I think, than the Vikings. I think the Vikings have Seattle, Green Bay, and you guys, right? If I'm not
correct.
mistaken.
Yes.
But now Green Bay comes into the mix somehow. Like, Green Bay is 10-4. They're not officially eliminated. And the Seattle thing, the Seattle game for Minnesota is mitigated a little by we don't know what's going on with Geno Smith, and Sam Howell is Jameis Winston light. That's just
he's not even.
I'm saying in terms of interception. Last year was 30 for 30. Jameis 30 for 30 that one year. Sam Howell's 21 of 21. 21 touchdowns, 21 interceptions. So it's basically the same thing,
I watched Sam Howell a little bit in that game the other day, and I'm like, God, it's amazing the drop off. And again, knock on wood, Jared Goff gets hurt. Hendon Hooker comes in. We have no idea what that young kid looks like. But some of these backups and some of these teams are just terrible. Oh, my gosh. It's so bad.
That's a really good point, because Miami's season is over, not because Tua was injured, if we're being honest about it. So they didn't have a capable backup behind it. I know we're going into this week, and a lot of people are, especially on this deal, looking at the lines, but you mentioned backup quarterbacks. There's a chance, I don't think he won't, but there's a chance that Patrick Mahomes might not play Saturday. Look who their backup is. It's Carson Wentz. Like, they probably have the best quarterback room in the league. You mentioned Jared Goff, Hendon Hooker. There's a drop-off, okay? And we saw what's going on in Miami. You have Carson Wentz as your backup in Kansas City. That's ideal. Like, that's every team is looking for that kind of situation for it. If we have to, we can put a guy in who at one point played at an MVP level and did all these things. I do think teams do not think about that enough until they have to turn to their backup. And I think it's a real problem for a lot of teams around the league.
Let me ask you this. What is, and again, he's a hot head coaching commodity, but what does, as I like to call him, future head coach Aaron Glenn, the Lions defensive coordinator, what does he do? I mean, you lose your best corner, Carlton Davis. You lose your best pressures guy in Aleem McNeil because your other pressures guy, Aiden Hutchinson, he's lost for the year.
Right.
What do you do? I mean, how are they going to play, you think, defensively? They love man. They love being aggressive. But at what point, when do you just sit back and play zone and hope that on 3rd and 6, you only give up 5?
Well, listen, that's the essence of coaching, right? Like, to me, I hate coaches that say, here is my plan, execute my plan. To me, coaching is, what can you do? And I'm going to put you in the best possible position to succeed if you follow what I'm telling you. Like that's the whole thing to me. So to answer your question the best way I can is, what is he going to do? He's going to have to rely on his instincts of what he believes the players can do. Like, and that's it. It may be, a soft shell prevent the entire time, maybe just make people matriculate down the field and make them not drop a pass on third down, or not pick up a blocking assignment and mess something up, force them to make mistakes. I think that's the best way you can look at this. More games in the NFL are lost than won. And if you can try and slow things down, especially with a depleted defense like that, and make them do 10, 11, 12, 13-yard drives. Not a lot of teams can do that on a regular basis. So whatever defensive scheme you can put your players in to make them go the length of the field as much as possible, I think has to be his default position.
Now, the start of Sunday's game, we're talking to Trey Wingo, by the way, from DraftKings. The start of Sunday's game, you had a healthy Lee McNeil. You had a healthy Carlton Davis. And it didn't matter. Josh Allen was just on another planet. What'd you think of Sunday and what the Lions attempted to do? Nothing really worked. He was just unreal. What bugged me was the run game of the Bills without Allen, just handing the ball off. I was surprised at how much the Bills' offensive line dominated that game.
Well, let's start with Josh, right? I have a good friend of mine named Doug Clausen who used to work with me and one of my researchers at NFL Live, and now he's working for CBS Sports. If you don't follow Doug Clausen on Twitter, you should follow him. And he gave this information out. Quarterbacks in the history of the NFL with at least 340 passing yards, 2 passing touchdowns, and 60 rushing yards in a game. Josh Allen against the San Francisco 49ers. No, Josh Allen against the Rams. Josh Allen against the Lions, and Steve Young in Week 7 of 1991. That's it. So when we are talking about Josh Allen specifically, that's how much of an outlier he's been playing on over the last few weeks. And oh, by the way, the week before that against San Francisco, he became the first quarterback in NFL history to throw for a touchdown, run for a touchdown, and have a touchdown pass. Because that technically, that lateral goes down as a touchdown catch for him. Right. So the overall position of Josh Allen is he's playing at an outlier level, the likes of which we've never seen in the NFL before. I don't know what you could have done. I didn't like a couple of things situationally. Like I know, and I get, we're talking about the depleted defense. I understand that. I didn't love the onside kick in any way, shape, or form.
Neither did I.
Play. Yeah. I don't look, and I get it. And this is another thing that bothers me about coaching, right? Well, this is who we are. This is what we do. No, especially when you get into the postseason, what you need to be is whatever is necessary in the moment, right? That the adaptability, I think, is the one thing that the only flaw I have with Dan Campbell, and it's the only one, is that you need to be a little more adaptable based on the game situation. And the best way I can explain this to people that are listening, go back to Super Bowl 51, okay? Patriots are down 28-3 to the Falcons. 28-3 in the second half. Well, then it was 28-6. Then it was 28-9. Then it was 28-12. And then they got the strip sack, and that sort of got them rolling. The point being, stay in the game as long as you can. Stay in the game. Keep yourself in the game as long as you can. I remember I was at that Super Bowl. People were like, why are they kicking field goals? We need to go for it. Bill knew, hey, we're wearing them down. We just need to keep getting points on the board. And finally, at that last field goal, made it 28-12, which is 16 points, a 2-possession game. And amazingly, they got a turnover and they got the 2 touchdowns and the 2-point conversions to send it to overtime. I think there's this mentality, especially with a lot of younger coaches. And now Dan isn't super young, but this is year 3 into his, and he was an interim for the Dolphins a few years ago. I get it. But, this is, Bill Belichick wasn't a head coach in the NFL until he had been like an assistant for 12 or 14 years. Right. Okay. We do this every year, and Ben Johnson's going to be the beneficiary of that this offseason. We give these guys a big platform at a very young age. And a lot of times things that they would do in their first or second or third year of coaching, they realize by year 4, 5, or 6, well, that doesn't make any sense. So the Lions almost got burned the week before against the Packers. 4th and inches, I want to run out the clock. I believe we can go for it. Yeah, you have to believe you can go for it, but you also have to manage the downside risk of what if you don't. Like every decision has to be not only I believe we can do it. The answer is obviously yes, but what if we don't? And you almost didn't. I mean, Jared Goff's foot got stepped on. He made an unbelievable play to get that handoff, which allowed them to get the first down to run down the clock to let Bates kick the field goal. But it almost didn't work. And then the next week, we're doubling down and we're doing it again. At some point, discretion has got to be the better part of valor. It's not coaching scared, and it's not changing who you are. It's understanding that at its peak, especially in the playoffs, situational football reigns supreme. Every situation has to be looked at distinctly and differently and individually. And you can't say just with a blanket statement, this is who we are. This is what we do. Awful.
Jared Goff throws 5 picks in a game and they win, throws 5 touchdowns.
5 touchdowns and they lose. Like, football is weird. It's just weird.
It's crazy. It's absolutely crazy. All right. The offense is actually obviously going to have to carry him the rest of the way. That starts this Sunday in Chicago against the Bears. We'll talk about that and more with Trey Wingo. Want to get his thoughts on Chicago, these last 3 games, and also Philly being red hot. We'll get Trey's thoughts on it as well from DraftKings coming up next. But first, we got to tell you about our friends at College Football on TNT. That's right. College football playoffs are on TNT this weekend. The playoff is back, newly expanded 12-team format, guaranteed to be bigger and better than ever, bringing you all the hard-hitting and high-flying excitement that you love. TNT's sports coverage of the college football playoff starts Saturday, December 21st, this weekend with the College Football Playoff Kickoff Show presented by AT&T at 11 a.m. Eastern, leading into the first matchup, SMU against Penn State at noon. Then at 4, Clemson looks to upset Texas in a big showdown down south. Don't miss a moment of the action. Watch the College Football Playoffs presented by Allstate live on TNT, True TV, TBS, and Max. Trey Wingo with us from DraftKings, pregame power up Mondays and Thursdays. He is the host at 6 o'clock. Also see him all over social media, and love getting Trey's takes. I love. We're sometimes you're in the car doing takes on Sunday mornings on games. How do you pick where you're going to be doing your little selfie videos? I enjoy that.
Well, thank you. What I try and do is I try and knock them out Saturday so I can fire them up first thing Sunday morning and get them out there. So wherever I am where I have a few moments, I just sort of sit over, go through my notes, get everything out there, get them out there. Because you know how it is these days. Well, there's Twitter or X. It'll always be Twitter to me. It'll never be X. Then there's Instagram. Well, now there's Threads, and now there's Blue Sky Social. Like, It's a process to get these things out there. It takes like 45 minutes, and you want to have good Wi-Fi. So I find some place Saturday where I can record them based on all the information that I have. And then the first thing I do when I get up Sunday morning is pump them out there with the good Wi-Fi here so we can get those things out and I can prepare for the day the rest of the way.
I love it. All right, real fast. I was watching Chicago last night. They're an embarrassment. Yeah. I can't believe how bad they are. Yet, this is not going to be an easy game Sunday. The Lions had issues there last year at Soldier Field. What are your thoughts on Detroit and Chicago this weekend? And the Lions going into an outdoor game without David Montgomery.
Yeah, I mean, this is where you'd like to have his running in that kind of slop if it's going to be bad. I haven't looked at the weather, but I'm assuming it's not going to be great in Chicago. And that field is always an issue, right? Let's be honest.
Yeah.
Soldier Field, FedEx, and Acrisure now, I guess is what they call it in Pittsburgh. Those are the fields that always get beat up the more than any other fields in football. Any other fields. They always have issues there. My thoughts on Chicago specifically in terms of the team, they've got to make sure they handle this Caleb thing going forward the right way. Look, he has all kinds of talent. He holds onto the ball way too long. He'll make really good throws, and then there'll be open receivers, and he's not throwing it to him. So that tells you, like, go back to the Thanksgiving Day game, right? That final drive, which was a mess across the board, and Eberflus messed it up. But so did Caleb. I mean,
right.
There was no sense of hurry up. There was no sense of we gotta go, And he missed a shallow cross that would have been a huge play for them in that game. So people always talk about the game slowing down. The game has not slowed down yet for Caleb. He is slowing down the game. And if you had some people that could pressure him in that situation, that would be very good. We don't know how realistic that is with all the injuries you have on the defensive side of the ball. But you've got to confuse him a little bit, because when he is confused, he holds on. Like, people always say, oh, the offensive line is terrible, and they're not great. But a lot of those sacks, it's like 3.5, 4. Get rid of it. Move on. Sometimes the best play is an incompletion because you're not throwing it to the other guy and you're not taking a loss for a sack. Quarterbacks need to realize that an incompletion sometimes is the best play you can make. I think Jared knows that outside of that game against the Texans. And I think that Caleb needs to learn that.
When you look at this Lions offense, we mentioned it before. I mean, do they have to put up 42 every game now the rest of the way to win? But, man, it's been so good. And again, even this weekend, all right, the Bills had their number. It was 14-0 early, but, Goff throws for nearly 500 yards. Yes, the MVP is going to be Josh Allen, but Jared's top 5, isn't he?
Top 3 for me.
Top 3.
I mean, at worst 4. I mean, listen, the only way Saquon gets it, because it's such a quarterback-driven award now, is if he sets the record, and I think he's behind pace now for Eric Dickerson. And now that they're going to try to emphasize the passing game a little more to placate other people on the Eagles, I'm not sure he's going to get that record. So it's Josh. It's still Lamar, I think, is in the hunt after a 5-touchdown performance. I mean, just so people understand about Lamar, that was his 5th game of his career with at least 5 touchdowns and fewer than 5 incompletions. No one else in the history of the NFL has more than 3 of those games. So that's where Lamar is. And oh, by the way, with the loss to the Eagles on Sunday, suddenly the Ravens still have a game against the Steelers in Baltimore, which could be for the AFC North crown. And the Steelers, who were looking so good 2 weeks ago, they may have to slug their way through a wild card after the loss to Cleveland and now the loss this past Sunday to Philadelphia. So I do think it's a 4-man race, and Jared is in that top 4 for sure.
All right, top of the NFC. You mentioned Minnesota before, and the way Darnold is playing. I saw one of your social media hits today about Kevin O'Connell. Yes, Dan Campbell's got to be in the mix for Coach of the Year, but man, KOC and what's going on in Minnesota, he's probably the front runner right now, isn't he?
I would say so. He is in the DraftKings Sportsbook, and the reason I would say that, I expected Detroit to be good. You expect the Chiefs to be good, whether it's fair or unfair. You always expect Mike Tomlin to find a way to have a non-losing season because he's never had one. By the way, the fact that he has never won the award is bonkers to me.
It's crazy.
But I think that with the uncertainty about what Sam was able to bring and all the changeover they've had, and moving on from Kirk and all those kind of things, yeah, I think KOC has to be considered, and he is the front runner right now in the DraftKings Sportsbook.
All right, so you got the Lions still with the 1 seed now and still can control their own destiny. You mentioned Minnesota, and then you throw Philly in the mix with their long win streak. How do you kind of look at these teams now with all these injuries here in Detroit?
Well, Philadelphia is really good right now. I mean, this little winning streak they're on is really impressive. But there always seems to be something with the Eagles, right? There was
right.
By the way, I got to say, I hate it when players do this. A.J. Brown lit a fire by talking, right, last week when he said passing. And then it was clearly interpreted correctly that it was an issue between A.J. Brown and Jalen Hurts, because then Brandon Graham went out and blabbed about it, right? And said, those two got to get together, and 11 needs to do that, and 10 I know 10 or 1 is trying, whatever. I'm like, so you're basically saying, this is what we thought, he said, and you're confirming it. And then after the game, A.J. Brown says, just shut up. Well, dude, if you had shut up, we wouldn't have had any of this. Like,
right.
You brought this along by not shutting up. So please don't tell me to shut up. So that part. But there's always something in Philadelphia, right? And even during the game, Nick Sirianni had to be separated from Jalen Carter. Now, it was a horrible thing that Jalen Carter did. There's no reason to punch a guy like that in the side of the helmet unless you're playing in the 70s and the head slap is a legal move by a defensive lineman. Been banned for 40 years, okay? But it just seems like there's always something with Philadelphia. And look, they're playing great. They finally got the passing game going. They were 31st in the league heading into last week. But there's always something about Philadelphia that makes me think, I don't know. I always feel like I'm waiting for something to go wrong.
By the way, every time they show that Jalen Carter play, they always bring up L.C. Greenwood. I mean, like, the head slap. Could you imagine if that was still legal today? Oh my gosh.
Ed Too Tall Jones used to do
that.
Just whap right across the side.
What a move. How was the lineman you were able to recover from that? I have no idea. Who else? You mentioned Philly, you mentioned Minnesota. Who should the Lions be trying to avoid here? And look,
I'll throw out 2 that I think are really interesting. Right, okay. One that went up there and beat you guys week 2, and that would be Tampa Bay. Look, they had every reason to quit. 4-6. They lost Godwin. They lost Evans, and now they're on a little bit of a roll. And look, if they lose once, the Atlanta Falcons are in great shape because they swept the season series. But Kirk Cousins looks like he hit the wall so hard, the wall is hitting back. And he finally had a touchdown pass for the first time in 5 games last week. Also threw another interception, 17 yards, I think it was. Kirk, it looks like, people don't play for 45 for a reason. Most people can't get there, right? So it looks like even at 37 or 36, whatever Kirk is, this is a problematic season for him. So Tampa Bay, I find fascinating. I love Baker's attitude. I love the fact that he's finally found his footing on his 4th team, kind of like Sam, even though Sam will not be a Viking next year. They won't be able to pay him. There'll be so much interest in him by so many quarterback needy teams, and it's not a deep quarterback draft. The other one is the Rams. Their best is as good as anybody's. Matthew Stafford, as you guys know in Detroit, 16th season and is playing maybe the best football of his career. And it's hard for me to imagine now that Cooper Kupp is clearly the second best receiver on the Rams. This kid, Puka Nacua, I don't think there's a better set of hands in the NFL. I mean, he just swallows up footballs. And that sideline catch he had against the Bills, which was only about a 10, 12-yard route to the sidelines, it's one of the catches of the year. Like, it was just unbelievable, his body control and the things he was able to do. The Rams are interesting. They're a little young on defense, but they have playmakers on defense. They got a lot of rookies that are playing really, really well. I think the Rams are going to be a very, very tough out in the postseason. If they get there. They get there.
Well, I always refer to it on the pod here as my crack research staff. It's one guy, and he texted me about a month ago and said, get ready for Lions Rams Part 3. I said, what are you talking about? And now all of a sudden, it's possible Detroit could be the 5 and the Rams could be the 4. I'm like, oh God, another.
Yeah.
Can you imagine?
I mean, that's and people always get upset about that with the NFL. That will never change. People always get upset about the Electoral College every presidential race.
That's right.
That's never changing. And I don't think the NFL is ever not going to award a home game to someone that wins their division. I just don't think they're ever going to move off that position.
It's wild. Trey, real fast on the show, 6 o'clock Mondays and Thursdays. You guys have a lot of fun with pregame power up, but give us a little background on it.
Absolutely. We get you set up for your fantasy football lineups, which are now in the fantasy football playoffs and semifinals with the weeks coming up. And, we have great insights from Marshall Newhouse, who played 11 years in the league as an offensive lineman. I always believe offensive linemen are the smartest group of guys on any unit there because they have to be so tied together. And we're going to do an expanded, complete postseason show. So for every single round of the playoffs, we will have a pregame power up on DraftKings Network, which you can catch on YouTube, on Sling, on Samsung Plus. We stream the shows live on Twitter. But we'll wild card round, college football championships, we'll be all over that. Divisional round, conference championship, and we'll be in New Orleans. So everything, the pregame power up is going to be there for every single season of the NFL regular and postseason going forward. So we're really looking forward to it.
All right, brother. Always good to check in. Thanks so much.
You got it, Matt. Take care, buddy.
Trey Wingo with us from DraftKings pregame power up Mondays and Thursdays at 6. We're back tomorrow with another episode of Locked On Lions. Don't forget Thursday, Lauren Cox and the Thursday crossover.